Welcome to our latest session at LocalGov Drupal Week. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with my notes because I'm on multiple screens here. Just bear with me a second. Okay, so this session's entitled Creating Inclusive Experiences for Send Audiences Using LocalGov Drupal, and it's hosted by Cythia and Leila from Invuse. Thanks to both of you. We'd like to take the opportunity to thank our event sponsor, Home Connections. Owned and led by local authorities and housing associations, Home Connections is a social purpose company supporting a fairer housing sector. Thanks also to all our council and supplier subscribers, including Invuse, and our supporting partner Netcore, who've all contributed so much to the project and to this week. Just a bit of Zoom help. You can decide how to view the meeting in the top right under the View option. And there's different ways you can look at it there. Please add any questions in the chat and we'll do questions at the end. I'll now hand you over to Leila, who will be running the session. Thank you, Leila.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tim. And good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for joining our lunchtime session. I am very aware it's lunchtime, so really appreciate you all joining us. Welcome to our session on creating inclusive experiences for send audiences using LocalGov Drupal. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Leila, and I'm the Customer Success Director for Invuse. I've been working at Invuse for just under 3 years now, but prior to that, I actually used to lead digital for a local council, so I've very much been on both sides of the fence, and I've also been lucky enough to work with RNIB for many years as well, being involved in various digital accessibility projects as well. With me today is my colleague Cythia. Cythia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Leila. Hello, everyone. My name is Cythia, and I'm a user researcher at Invuse. I've been with Invuse for almost 2 years now, and I've gotten to work with a lot of local councils, and I'm really excited to share with you today some of the things that I've learned from working on Send Local offer sites and how that can help you with thinking about user needs.
Amazing. Thank you, Cythia. So for those of you who don't know, at Invuse, we're digital transformation specialists, and we use user research, accessibility, and content best practices in order to meet users' needs. Our mission is to connect the dots between your users' needs and your organization's objectives. By giving users and stakeholders a voice, we enable you to deliver quality, inclusive digital experiences designed with people at the core, which really resonates with Send in particular for us. What we're going to be going over today is co-production. So I'll be handing over to Cythia shortly to discuss co-production, what it is, what it isn't, and how you can go about in doing some of that within your own council. I'll then be talking through some actionable insights. So taking that research into the real world, what does that look like? We'll share some top tips, and then we've got time for questions, provided I don't talk too much as well. So Cythia, I will hand over to you to talk about co-production.
Thanks, Leila. So co-production, what is it really? So before creating anything, you need to talk to your users, and that is where co-production comes in. So according to the Send Code of Practice, it is required to involve children, parents, and young people in planning the content of the local offer, deciding how to publish the local offer, and reviewing the local offer. That might sound a little daunting, but it really just means that you involve the users of your website in the process of creating and allowing them to feed back into the website and the services available for them. So some things that it doesn't mean. This doesn't mean that you should ask your user groups those exact questions, but rather you're really trying to understand what their needs and challenges are. This can really help shape the content that you put on your Send Local offer site. You also want to kind of dive into where they want the content to be. What kind of content types do they want? What would be easiest for them? That could be a newsletter, that could be content that's on the website, that could be face-to-face interactions, that could be content also shared on social media. So it's really just trying to understand who your users are and where they are at and how you can basically offer that content to them. Some things that you want to make sure that users have is the ability for users to feed back into the website, specifically asking them if the content is helpful and if they're able to find what they're looking for. You also want to make sure users have different forums or groups set up for parents with children, young people, carers, and professionals, so that they have a safe space to share their feedback and that you're building those relationships with them. Really, you just want to understand if they're able to actually find useful and key information when it comes to your website. And if they're not able to find the information they need, then why is that and how can you fix it? If they're not able to find that information, then it doesn't matter what you have on your website because they won't be able to get to it. This just goes back to having a website with good navigation and that it's user-centered. So, very important, you want to think about prepping for the session. So some good things to think about. It is always important to have a very clear objective of what you want to know from your user group. You should have some ideas about what you want to get feedback on, unless it's a session to generate new ideas or to build that rapport and that relationship. It isn't just about, again, asking users what they like and what they don't like. You really want to try to understand their problems and what they need, and how what you're offering could help them. When it comes to engaging with parents, children, and young people, it is important to know what information is relevant to know for each of the user groups. So for example, you won't be asking the same questions of young people that you do for parents and vice versa. It is important to allow young people a place where they can share their ideas and their feedback, really tap into them, see what ideas they have, how do they like to see content, do they need a separate section for just them on the website, what does that look like? Be open to the solution not just being a website. I'm not saying the website is obviously very important. That's what we're talking about today. But during co-production, you really want to strive for understanding and what they need. I'm going to come back to that a lot, what they need, how they want to see content, and what you could offer to help the user groups with those needs, specifically in this instance with young people and with parents and young and children. So just going in with an open mind, being open to different ideas, not being so solution focused, but coming up with solutions after you talk to them. But remember that co-production is really about that continuous feedback and building a relationship of trust with your residents. So we've talked about prepping for the session. So let's talk about good questions to ask. So this afternoon, we are obviously talking very heavily about LGD and websites. So just remember that just because your questions aren't necessarily specific to websites doesn't mean that you can't think about how to use the website to solve the problems users are facing. So you're the experts in website design. You take their problems and you think about how that translates to what you can put on your SendLocal offer site. It is important to ask open-ended questions that don't lead the user into a certain answer. For example, I always ask at the end of the sessions, is there any additional feedback you would like to share? Even if it's not specific to what we were talking about, just let them open up and let them share. So specific questions for each of the user groups that I find very helpful, and you don't have to ask these specific questions to each of them, but this is kind of what you might want to know from each of these user groups. So for children, the central point of involving them in co-production is not just to get feedback on the website. They probably won't be going on the computer, going to your SendLocal offer site. It is really to understand what they need and then thinking about how what you're putting on your website can help parents access those needs. This feedback can help with content needs. It can also help you to think about activities that could be offered in your borough or in your local council and what support parents might need with their children. The aim is not just to get feedback on the website, it is to understand what they need. I said I'd be coming back to that a lot. And then think about how and what you're offering. You could ask questions around what challenges do they have at school or home? What activities would they like to get involved in? Things like that. There's obviously statutory information that you have to have on your SendLocal offer site, but it's also understanding what else needs to be on there. And also, is the way that I'm presenting that statutory information best for the users, or do I need to change the language and think about that too? So that's where all of that comes in. For young people, consider having more open forum discussions or co-design activities where they input directly into website content or how they like to get information. Again, think more deeply about the user needs and what they really need and how solutions to those needs can be shared. You could ask questions around how do they consume content? What are their challenges in life? Where do they go for information? Then looking at parents, for parents, they are going to be one of the primary users of your Send website. You really want to understand the problems that they face and also what support they might need. This could be about understanding how they can get to that information quickly on your website, maybe how the navigation needs to change or headings need to be clearer. Carers also are a part of parents, but they might not be a parent too. So they're another user group that will be using your website very heavily. A lot of feedback that we have gotten in some sessions with carers is that they kind of feel forgotten. So don't forget about them when you're working on your Send local site. They felt like there wasn't clear support on some websites. So some people mentioned wanting to see like therapy sessions and support groups. So for parents and carers, some questions to ask are like, what are their needs and challenges? What are their user journeys on the website? This could come from analytics and from speaking to them in focus groups or interviews. And then also you want to understand, are they able to accomplish those goals? And then why or why not? One other user group before we move on that we won't talk about too much in this session is professionals. They will also be a huge user of your Send local site. So you also want to consider their needs and how content that is specific for them can be found easily. So we've talked about co-production, what it is, a little bit about what it isn't, some good questions and some prepping. So now I just wanted to kind of share some activities that I found have been really helpful in kind of speaking with people and getting them involved in the research. The most important thing about co-production, after knowing what you want to ask, is having a clear idea of what activity will help you get the information that you need. So it's really important to consider your audience and not just think about co-production as a one-off activity. Co-production, again, is getting consistent, constant feedback from your users. So some activities that I wanted to share with you, the first one is usability testing. So if you're really wanting to understand how users experience your website or if they're able to find what they're looking for, consider a usability test. This could just be a few tasks that you ask the user to complete on the website. You watch them, you see how they navigate, you see what issues they come up with, what are the barriers to finding that information, and then asking them questions about their experience finding it. It is always a great idea to get users to share their thoughts out loud during these sessions. Usability testing is really great for gathering information around issues with the website. And it's also really good for showing how users interact with your website and to get impressions about your website from the users. The next activity is focus groups. So focus groups are essentially a group of people that are giving feedback around a central question or idea. Focus groups are great to allow you to discover needs and challenges, brainstorming ideas, and also allowing for a safe space for honest and open discussion. For focus groups, it is important to keep focus groups small. I would say a max of 6 people. More than this, and you will kind of notice that not everyone will be able to share their thoughts, or there might be too many people trying to share and there's just not enough time. So the last activity I want to touch on is vision boards. So if you've ever done a vision board, maybe in school or outside of school, I do vision boards all the time just because I love them. But I think vision boards are great for getting young people and children involved in co-production. Again, it's important to have that central question that you want to gather information around. It's a fun activity that is collaborative and creative. This works well for young people or children. This could be an activity around a question like, you know, where do you get information? What activities do you like to do? What are your challenges? Those kinds of things. They could have post-it notes, you could bring stickers in, and you could just allow them to draw and kind of have that vision board session. Again, I'd kind of keep these small and just be mindful of the ability levels of the people in the group. So there's so many activities that you can do for co-production. These are just a few activities and how I think they might help you with your research. So just a few more things from me before I pass it over to Leila. So again, co-production and any other user research is an ongoing process to truly understand the needs of children, parents, and young people. You really need to figure out all the touch points that a user has to your service and see how you can observe them and see what's happening in each of those touch points and figuring out what the barriers and blockers are. So this, again, I'm kind of talking more broadly. It goes beyond the website, but it's just really important to have that like bigger perspective, especially with users. This helps you to truly understand the challenges that users have. It also helps you to understand them in their context and not in your context. This is about being in their life and trying to really understand the problems that they face. Be empathetic, be understanding. I keep saying that a lot, but it's so, so, so important. In this instance, some ideas for where this might happen at a council is with the customer service advisors, anyone who deals with residents face-to-face, not informal research, maybe at community centers, at libraries. Go and sit in these environments to get a feel and understanding of what a resident's day is like day to day. Sit in the residents' meetings. It might be uncomfortable and a little scary at first, but you can build trust over time, and it's so important to have that bigger picture when you're thinking about your website. So now that I've talked about the research, what do you do with it? I'm going to pass it over to Leila to talk about actionable insights.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cythia. So what I'm going to cover today is once you've done that research, how do you then take that forward into your LocalGov Drupal site? What are the things you need to consider? How do you do it? So today, the example I'm going to be using is Essex. Essex launched their local offer website on LocalGov Drupal just over a year ago now, and we've been continuing to work with them for the past year on that ongoing piece of research and co-production as well. So where am I going to start? I'm going to start with the homepage. I'm sure the majority of us on this call are all too aware of the controversy about what goes on your homepage, what doesn't go on your homepage, what goes top left, what goes on the bottom right, all of those sorts of things. So what I want to talk through is how we put that homepage together for Essex and why. So the one thing that we heard continually throughout our research was that people didn't know where to start. And this wasn't just people on the website, this was more broadly as well. As Cythia alluded to earlier, this isn't just about problems with your digital stuff, it's about other problems within that community, within those residents. And the piece of feedback we heard over and over again was users just didn't know where to start. Perhaps they just had a diagnosis, perhaps they suspected their child might have additional needs, or perhaps they'd hit some financial difficulties or didn't know which school to apply to. And they were looking for help, they didn't know what to do. And we ran an awful lot of road shows. We attended the Essex road shows, and we could really hear those user stories firsthand as well. And in order to tackle this, what we did is we developed a homepage that essentially reflected that send journey for users. And hopefully you can see here from the left here, people commented that the structure of the homepage was sensible, supportive, and broadly reflected the send journey. Now, for those of you who have send sites, it probably looks a bit different. The Essex one previously had lots of different information on, lots of different sections, social care, education, all of those kind of typical normal things you would see on a send site. But we took that away and we developed this IA that starts, so in the top left, I think my child needs help with learning, health and well-being, appeals, advice and mediation, financial support, crisis support, and then your kind of two big blocks in the middle there are search, support groups and activity. That's your directory piece, and the advice for young people section as well, which traditionally is called preparing for adulthood. So while we're thinking about the homepage, let's have a little talk about kind of colours and images as well. So purple. The brand colour provided to us was purple, and that's what we were to work with on the Essex local offer. And it's kind of split the room, I won't lie. So some users really liked it, others felt it really wasn't very engaging. So for example, in some of our focus groups and interviews with professionals, they highlighted that whilst they liked the homepage and the layout, they weren't wildly excited about the colours and they didn't find it particularly engaging. And at one point, the directory was purple. And when I say purple, I mean very purple, and felt quite repetitive in places as well. We ran a quite large co-production session with children and young people as part of this project. And what came out of that was they wanted more colour, and more specifically, a rainbow. The previous site for the local offer was bright yellow. It had lots of different colours all over it, and there was in fact a rainbow as well. We were quite conscious of this, so we wanted to make this feel inclusive for children and young people, but we were also very aware about adding to that cognitive load for people as well. We didn't want people to arrive and have that feeling of not knowing where to start again. So in order to balance this, we did this. So you can see here over on the right hand side, that's sort of an initial mock-up of what we were working with and what the children and young people saw as part of that session. And Jess, who was the UX designer from the Essex side, worked really hard to understand how we could inject colour into the homepage without overwhelming users. And what we did in the end is use that kind of block. And most of us on this call, if you've got a LocalGov Drupal site, you've probably used that kind of big block to showcase, you know, the local town centre, monuments, all of that sort of thing. And in this case, we used it to pull through that colour. So you've got the blue in that little boy's t-shirt, the pink, the green, and that lovely light blue background. And what that does is it injects that colour and energy that those children and young people wanted to, without dominating the rest of that homepage too much. Let's talk about images and iterating through. So initially, when we first created the site, images were only appearing on that homepage. And again, this goes back to that children and young people section as well. They felt that particularly in their area of content, that site needed to feel more welcoming and more engaging. But again, we didn't want to add lots and lots of additional images as well. A quick note about images as well is to be really careful when you're selecting your images, particularly if you're using stock images. So at one point on that homepage, there was an image of a little boy who's maybe about 6 in a wheelchair. And when we was talking to that kind of preparing for adulthood team, they had real concerns that this actually didn't represent a lot of the SEND audience and could actually exclude people from feeling that this content and information was for them. So what you'll see now on the homepage is there's some much more inclusive imagery, and within the children and young people section in particular, you can see lots of images of people kind of age 14 plus essentially, which is who that section is aimed for. In order to get that kind of feel for the children and young people and balancing against the information for parents, what we did was we used the sub-site functionality within LocalGov Drupal. And if you have a look at it, you'll see that it's blue rather than purple. So it has a distinct personality, and we've added that additional imagery in there as well. So it feels welcoming, feels more engaging, and it's something that the team are now building on as well. So with further research and iterations and working out how we can continue to engage children and young people through that section of the site. Something that I thought a lot of us on this call might find interesting is use of icons. I think there was a huge rise in kind of using icons on council websites about 10 years ago. So if you had your waste and recycling, you'd have a little picture of a bin next to it. And it was very popular and it was everywhere for quite a while. And we thought we'd try it out. We thought it might add a bit of personality to the site, bring people in, but actually it tested really, really poorly. Either users didn't notice them at all, but those that didn't like them. They stated to lose them, to use proper pictures. And one of the comments, and we had a really interesting focus group with parents in particular, that talked about if we're going to use images, we should be using pick images in order to kind of help people through their journeys more. That's something that's on the backlog in the icebox, and we might explore that in the future. But ultimately, we decided to take those off that homepage in order to keep that inclusive experience for everyone. Let's talk a little bit about user journeys. So, signposting. One of the most interesting things to come out of our discussions was that we were really heavily focused on what was directory content and what was kind of informational content. And that was really key to us, getting that directory right, getting that information right. But for users, they didn't see that distinction. They didn't consider the directory and the information necessarily separate entities, and they wanted to, when we gathered feedback from people, they would talk about them interchangeably. And that was something we really needed to facilitate through the site, but also obviously using the best that LocalGov Drupal's got to offer, and that directory being a key piece of that information and that site. So it's very simple. We use standard kind of signposting between those information pages over to the directory. You can see it's on the left hand side here. You've got the lovely little purple button which says find life skills support. Click on it, it takes you straight to the directory. Really clear, easy signposting and user journeys. While we're talking about content, I thought it might be useful just to touch on the content types that we used and the ones that we didn't actually find that useful within LocalGov Drupal for this. So as I've mentioned already, obviously you've got standard content pages, landing pages, homepage, directory being a massive part of that. We use the guides quite heavily. The thing that we didn't find particularly helpful for this were the step-by-steps. And the reason for that was that a lot of the send processes are not easy to put into a 1, 2, 3 format. They're complicated, they're difficult, or they've got long bits of time in between each one. So we found that those kind of step-by-steps were not necessarily good at facilitating what those journeys were, and actually the guides were a better option for us in those cases. There is an exception, it's in the mediation section. If you want to have a look, that's the one, I think that's still there. I think it's still the only one as well. Let's talk a little bit about content then and how we took those insights through. So when we first started this project, there was a question around whether, because of the audiences here, whether we needed to create a more kind of empathetic feel to that content design rather than going down that gov.uk clarity view. But actually what the research showed, and this was across parents and young people and children as well, was that what people wanted was clear, simple language, clarity and clear guidance, and inclusive labeling of sections. One of the quotes that has stuck out to me, and I think I use in every presentation I ever give, is something is going to take 20 weeks, just tell me that. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Sure, is it great that something's going to take 20 weeks? No, of course it's not. But if you tell someone it's going to take 20 weeks, they're not going to be chasing you after 3 days. They're going to be, maybe they'll chase you at 10 weeks, I would be, but you get that kind of feel to it. You are able to meet those users' expectations, and you manage that going forward as well. Some other things I thought would be useful to note here is around some of the terminology. Initially on that homepage, we had a section called education, but this proved to be too broad during the testing. So when we tested it out, we did card sorting with children and young people with this one. And what we found was that they were putting things like life skills, housing, all of those things into education. They were taking a much broader view of education than what was actually intended. Conversely, the use of the word schools was actually not inclusive enough, because it felt that people who were in colleges, maybe nursery, or out of kind of standard education, maybe being taught from home, those sort of things were not included in with that. So we end with help with learning for that one. Another one to kind of to showcase some of this was know your rights. We thought this was a really good term at first to incorporate all those kind of appeals, advice, mediation, finance at one point as well. But actually, again, this proved too ambiguous. The parents and carers felt that that was actually aimed at children and young people, and children and young people didn't know what should be in there, and they didn't know what you would find in there. So we changed it to appeals, advice and mediation in order to provide that clarity as well. Let's talk a little bit more about the directory. So what we were really keen to do was utilize that directory to allow the audience to get to the services and support that they needed. We worked really closely with Anatech on this. They were a development partner throughout this project, and they put an awful lot of work into those facets, the filters and the directory and the way it worked. One of the key things for us was how people would initially filter that information. And we ran a big survey right at the start of the project to understand how parents and carers chose a service or for their child or young person. And what came out from that piece of work was the special need or disability the service is suitable for was number one, location, age, whether it was in person or online, or whether you needed a referral or EHCP to access the service in that order. What you'll see over on the right here is tantamount to, once you've done that, you still need to test and keep going, because what we found was when we actually got into that testing period, age was the one that people actually gravitated towards as their first starting point. So age is now in that kind of top filters in that directory piece. So I'm going to, fortunately for you guys now, pass that over to Cythia to share Cynthia's top 5 tips on co-production. So Cythia.
Yeah, one last thing from me. So just remember, during co-production, keep your sessions accessible. That just basically means make sure there's, like, if someone's coming in a wheelchair, that there's a ramp available. Just be mindful of the space accessibility. If you're using digital devices, consider the digital accessibility as well. That goes into number 2, which is know that know the needs and ability levels of the group that you will be working with. So just ask questions around, you know, how many people will be there? Does anybody have any special needs? That kind of thing. Just really get as much information as possible before you go. Number 3, include a wide range of needs and ages. So just making sure that you're diversifying that. And then number 4, make it clear what you want to know from that session and also telling them what you won't be able to do. So for example, if they come up with an idea, say, thank you so much for that. That's not something we'll probably be going forward with now, but I'm gonna, you know, save that feedback for later. And then the last one, which I think is very important, follow up with your residents. So a lot of time residents, if they feel like they're giving feedback over and over and over again, they just don't think it's going anywhere, they'll stop to give you that feedback. So just make sure that you're not just noting things down with no follow-up. Residents really need to know that you're listening and that you care about what they have to say and you're taking it seriously. So you will lose trust with your residents if you don't do this. So definitely do that. Back to you, Leila.
Lovely. Thank you, Cythia. So my top tips for, it's not moving, for actioning those insights. Listen to your users and understand their challenges and their lived experience. I can't emphasize this enough. Is it all going to be able to be translatable onto your website? No, but hear your user stories, go to the roadshows, as Cythia said, sit in those community centres and residence group and actually hear what people's day-to-days are like, what their frustrations are, and that will really help you shape what you're trying to offer people. If your users are time poor and need to access information quickly, you need to think about that as you design your website and your content as well. Involve children and young people, and I can't emphasize the importance enough. Is it always easy? No. Are you going to take multiple trips to Hobbycraft? Yes. But you get so much of a richness from that research and that information, and it will allow you to create a truly inclusive experience as well. Test, test, and test again. As Cythia said earlier, co-production isn't a one-time thing. You need to be going back to your residents, going back to your users and testing throughout. And launch isn't the end of that either. You need to continually be going in, testing, iterating, and making sure you're continuing to cater for your residents' needs, especially as, you know, things continue to evolve. You really want to make sure you're still meeting those needs. Content types. Avoid a one-size-fits-all approach to your content types. And this is something that LocalGov Drupal can offer really well for that local offer audience as well, because you need to be able to display information in the best way possible. I said already, the directory was a really key piece for us, but also the guides, your content pages, using the full kind of functionality within LocalGov Drupal to really support your end users is really key to this. And finding a balance in the middle ground. I take you back to those images and those colors at the beginning. If we'd just taken that feedback from children and young people and taken it at face value, we would have had a big bright yellow website again with a massive rainbow splashed all over it, and you'd have actually ended up excluding users. So you need to consider the need of everyone involved and come up with a solution that meets the majority of users' needs. You're never going to be able to meet everyone. There's always going to be extremes, people who, you know, hate the color purple, all of those things, but you can come to a solution that is as inclusive as possible. Lovely. You'll be pleased to know we're going to stop talking for a minute and we'll hand back over to Tim for questions.
That was brilliant, guys. Thanks very much for that. There are some questions already in the chat and people are answering in there as well, but
Okay.
I might just do some follow-on from that.
Yeah.
Emma from Cumberland asked, did you use microsites, the microsites version of LGD for this site? And Stella said no. And the reason, and I was going to ask the reason, but she's beaten me to it. And Stella says microsites wasn't an option then. So I guess the follow-on question would be, would you consider using microsites now for this?
So yes, I think is the short answer for that. But again, it would be about establishing what the council's needs were. We're seeing a lot of people now who it's not just a send local offer they're building a family hub. It becomes a bigger entity. So there's definitely considerations in there as well. And there's benefits to both options, I would say.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. Does anyone know of any published research around the use of icons, asks Lizzie Cox from Bracknell Forest, asking as I've just put together an icon set for a new site, and I thought there was Emma has posted something that was from design systems on gov.uk. Leila, do you know of any research specifically on that?
So there are some bits and bobs out that I've read. We do have a Send research report as well that we kind of like brought a lot of this stuff together. So I could share that, which is particularly around the icons, obviously in Send, but I'm very happy to share that with people afterwards. If I've got a slide with our email addresses on, I'll pop that up. So if you ping me an email, I'm happy to share that with you guys if that's helpful as well.
Brilliant, thanks. Question from Finn. It sounds like there's some hugely valuable research and conclusions of which might be transferable to other councils. How can we better share the outputs of our research to inform future builds and improvements to the LGD defaults and avoid repeating research with similar outcomes? Adds Finn.
Perfect. So I think there's a few things in there. So the first one is I'm very happy to share that research report. It's just all the people that we've worked with so far, we've been bringing that together to build up a picture. So I'll share that. I don't know if Tim, there might be somewhere that you can share that within that LocalGov community Slack, however works best for you. So we're really happy to share that. In terms of kind of transferable research, there were obviously some really good transferable insights we found. What I would say is that there will be different needs based on kind of the makeup of your borough or district or area, and it's really important to explore those. So one of the things that stuck out for me in Essex was there was a real disparity between what was being offered in some areas of Essex versus others, and there were poor like people found it difficult to travel. So you do need to be able to dig into those needs as well. So it's a good starting point to have these kind of consolidated insights, but always do your own research with your own users. You know, if you've got a Send school that's failing people, you need to hear about that from the users, things like that. So it's kind of a combination of both, I would say.
Okay, great. A question from me.
Yeah.
Do you use my privilege as chair? Do you have like a standard sort of period for evaluation of what you've done and for a process for that sort of continuous improvement?
Sure. So out kind of as a standard thing, what we do is we call it our continuous improvement plan. And essentially it will dedicate one of our researchers to go back in to help you test, continue researching, not only to kind of continue to identify user needs and iterate through, but also to show progress. Like when you move over to a new website, you want to show the big bang. Like you want to say it used to take people 10 minutes to do this and now it takes 2. Woo. It's stuff like that we can help. So we know that not all councils have kind of a dedicated user research team and stuff. So if people want to have a chat to me about that, I'm really happy to.
Yeah, thanks for that. Does anyone else have any questions? Anyone? No? Okay. Leila or Cythia, is there anything you've thought about in the meantime that you'd like to add?
Just that I just wanted to reiterate what Finn said in the chat about sharing our research with each other and having a space to do that. I think that that's a great idea. And I know a lot of other people have mentioned that too. So I just wanted to kind of say, yes, I say yes to that, definitely.
From my side, Tim, I just want to thank everybody for coming today. It's so good to see people getting more and more interested in Send and really understanding that audience more. So yeah, we're overwhelmed by the amount of signups, and yeah, really, really grateful to everyone. And yeah, thank you so much.
We've actually got another question. If you can take another question,
Oh,
sorry.
okay. Yep. Of course.
People are still engaged. It's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is from Olivia Smith. Sorry if it's already been asked. I lost access to the chat for a while. Oh, in terms of the directory that formed part of the site, was this built using the LGD directory module? And who has access to update the directory?
Okay, so there was a huge amount of development that went in because out of the box, the directory didn't meet all the requirements, and Anatech put a lot of work and development into that. but essentially it is LocalGov Drupal with a lot of development on top. I don't know if that helps. In terms of access, it's using those kind of access roles. There is a directory role that is being utilized, and the team are actually building on that role at the moment to get it to allow permissions to do other things. It's a gradual process within Essex. So it was run by their central team, but it's been handed over to their SEND team to manage themselves now as well. And they've been doing that for the last year.
Well, thank you.
That's okay.
And I don't know if you know, Leila, but maybe someone from Anatech can answer if you're not sure. Do you know what was built on top of what was out of the box, and if any of that's like come into core?
Yeah, I can answer that, Tim. I actually did the building out of the. It was only extra fields on top of the as in mostly only extra fields on top of the directory page content type or directory venue content type. It won't be going back to core because all of those fields were custom to send requirements as opposed to LocalGov Drupal itself. After that, then there was some extra work done for allowing filters to be chosen, that if you chose, say, an age group of 0 to 6 and you chose schools and you chose something else, we were filtering out, showing everything that I can't remember which way it was.
Yeah, it's the and or issue, wasn't it, Mark?
This, or that, or that, and that has been contributed back, although it's not merged in just yet, but it looks like it's very close to being.
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, the filters in LocalGov Drupal previously were cumulative. So if you chose 0 to 6 and then you chose, say, Basildon, you got everything in Basildon and everything 0 to 6, even if that service in Basildon was actually for age 15 plus. And that was something we did through that user testing and changed through that development, that we were able to do the kind of. And the other thing that is probably of interest to people is around the services and the services and how you keep those up to date and get the service owners to do it rather than having to go out and manually do that as well. So there's a few different forms on the site as well where you can submit, oh, this was, this service is no longer running, all of that sort of thing. And you can also, they're actually building it at the moment, the ability to essentially send out auto updates to the suppliers to get them to input in what's going on. And I think Big Blue Door are working on that for us at the moment on that one. So there's a lot kind of still like there's kind of that, it's always that thing, isn't there? You launch and then you keep going and keep going. So it's really exciting.
Thanks for that. We've got another question. I'm not 100% sure what this means, but maybe you guys will.
Okay.
We use this is from Mariam. We use a shared directory. How would this integrate with FIS?
FIF.
Family Information Service, is that?
Ah,
So,
okay.
okay. So is this around kind of joining up, not just having your own dedicated send site? Is this what we're getting at? So actually Ryan Falcon Hayes on the call, and this is something we're working with Hammersmith and Fulham on now. I'm pulling everyone on today.
I've come off mute to talk about this.
Thank you.
I mean, Miriam, I guess my short answer would be if you're available at 4 o'clock to come to my session, because I'm going to talk about it then. But essentially, we've come off of open objects and we've built our FIS and send sites on LocalGov Drupal, and we've got one directory that covers both sides, and it also includes the Ofsted integration as well. So obviously for these guys, because it's just a send site, it's all separate from FIS, and I'm sure if Essex was to do a FIS, speaking on their behalf, but just because of the structure of everything, that would be a wholly separate thing unless they evolved a send site to become for FIS and send. Sorry about my voice.
That's brilliant, Ryan. Thanks. Do you want to add anything to that, Leila?
No, I just want to say thank you for Ryan for being a good sport. I don't think you knew your picture was going to appear in our presentation, did you? So thank you.
No.
There is one additional question from Finn, and the chat's going slightly crazy, so I can't find it. Oh, here we are.
Okay.
Recommended budget proportion for research versus build versus ongoing iteration. And I think Jamie has posted a response to that. which was
Yeah.
35% research, 45% dev, and 20% ongoing iteration.
Yeah, that's Jamie's RMD, so he's the one with the hands on all that. Yeah, that would sound about right to me. You really want to invest in that research, because if you don't do that research, you're not going to meet your user needs ultimately, however pretty your site is at the end.
That's brilliant. And that's a great way to end it, isn't it?
Yeah.
The focus on the user need. Brilliant. Okay, well, that draws the session to a close. Thanks very much to Leila and Cythia. It was a really great session. Thanks to everyone for coming. We hope you found it useful. And we hope you've enjoyed the other sessions so far this week for LocalGov Drupal week. Please give us your feedback by responding to the email that you'll receive after this session. Thanks again to our sponsor, Home Connections. There's lots going on this week, so please do register for future events. I'm going to put the link for that in the chat. Not too many left now, because we're towards the end of the week. I think there's only another 4 sessions, but yeah. Sorry, now I've lost my script and I can't remember what it was, but it's the same next. Oh, that's it. Didn't need the script for that, did I? So that's it from us. Hopefully we'll see you again in a session later today or tomorrow. Thanks again for running the session, guys. And that's it from us. Goodbye. Till next time.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.